It was only 1967. That's when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against laws that banned interracial marriages in the landmark case of Loving versus Virginia.
And today it's estimated that 12% of all U.S. marriages involved interracial couples, and the majority of Americans say they're favorable towards these relationships. But how do couples navigate the stresses of the current social realities that are surrounding these relationships? Our relationship expert, Dr. Shonda Craft, joins us this morning to talk about this question. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Good morning, both of you.
Yeah, so Shonda, while we know there is love and commitment in these relationships, there still are stressors.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's really only been 53 years, if you think about it, that these laws have been off the books and really legalized interracial marriages throughout our country. And so we know that there are still some disparities out there that exist between these couples, whether it's educational or economic. There also could be some age differences out there. But some of the biggest disparities really come from support from family members and how able those family members are willing to talk about having someone welcomed into their family that they maybe never expected. They never expected their child to marry someone from a different race, and now they're having to really deal with, okay, how do we talk about this? How do we relate to their cultural backgrounds? So that can really create a lot of stress for these couples.
I wonder also about if you are an interracial relationship where perhaps one of the people in the relationship is white and you have children who would be identified as black or who would self-identify as black, for example. Sort of the dynamic there that you have between, you know, there's another stress there perhaps with how open we are in social media now. People saying to a white parent of black kids, well, you're not. You may empathize with our community, but you're still white.
Right, absolutely. And there is oftentimes this mistaken or even invisible connection to children that white and black parents will experience. And so, you know, if you are a black parent and your children don't necessarily appear to have the same level of skin tonality as you do, you know, there's this whole phenomenon of people being asked if they are the nanny, particularly black women.
Sure.
And so if they are with children who are more white appearing or a little bit lighter, biracial children, this sense that you're not even connected to your own children is a phenomenon that does exist. Or as you said, Jason, you know, white parents who are being seen as, you know, maybe they adopted the children, or there must be some, you know, kind of reason why they have these children in their lives that they didn't come from them naturally and they can't possibly be prepared to take care of them. So it does really create a lot of tension.
And Shonda, you talked about the age discrepancy sometimes in differences in age in education, but also there's this idea of just acknowledging that even in that relationship that white privilege, that racism, these are all things that are real.
Yeah, there's a sociological term called homogamy, and this is really the idea that people marry people who are similar to them from a cultural standpoint. So whether it's age or education or economic background, family structure, and the idea is that we're really preparing our children when we're raising them to marry someone who is like them and like us. And so when you have these marriages or these relationships where you have racial differences, you know, frankly, the family members and the person themselves might not be fully equipped to think about how those disparities are really going to enter into their relationship if they have educational differences or economic differences, and really even their level of understanding and acknowledgement of race and racism and white privilege and how that might actually show up in their relationship.
Complex, very complex. Good to be aware of it and be informed. Shonda, thank you.
Yes, thank you.